On a chilly November morning in 1884, representatives from 14 European nations gathered at the Reich Chancellery on Berlin's Wilhelmstrasse. Their host was Otto von Bismarck, the formidable German Chancellor. The ostensible agenda was the Congo River Basin. The real agenda was nothing less than the future of an entire continent, Africa. Over the next 104 days, these diplomats, none of whom represented any African state, would redraw the map of the world. This was the Berlin Conference, a pivotal moment in European history that formalized the scramble for Africa and set in motion a chain of events whose effects are still felt today. This video analyzes the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 and the subsequent division of Africa, examining its causes, key decisions, and the devastating consequences for the African continent and its peoples. If you're enjoying this journey through history, please give the video a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories to life. The perfect storm. Causes of the conference. The Berlin Conference did not occur in a vacuum. Rather, it was the culmination of a perfect storm of European ambitions that had been gathering force for decades. Several factors converged in the late 19th century to create an environment ripe for a continental carve-out. The economic impetus was perhaps the most powerful driver. The Industrial Revolution had fundamentally transformed Europe's relationship with the rest of the world. Europe's rapidly industrializing economies had an insatiable appetite for raw materials: palm oil for machinery, rubber for tires and insulation, copper for electrical wiring, and cotton for textiles. The explorers who ventured into Africa's interior in the mid-19th century, most famously David Livingstone and Henry Morton Stanley, returned with tales of vast, untapped natural riches. At the same time, European factories were producing manufactured goods in quantities that far exceeded the purchasing power of domestic markets. Africa, with its millions of potential consumers, beckoned as a captive market. The logic seemed inescapable. Colonies could provide both the raw materials and the markets that Europe's industrial economies required to continue growing. Beyond economics lay the volatile realm of European power politics. The late 19th century was an era of intense rivalry among the great powers. Newly unified nations like Germany and Italy, having achieved their own political unification, were eager to demonstrate their status by acquiring overseas colonies. For France, still smarting from its humiliating defeat by Prussia in 1871 and the loss of Alsace-Lorraine, empire offered a path to regain national prestige. For Britain, already possessing the world's largest empire, expansion was often defensive, securing strategic choke points such as the Suez Canal to protect the jewel in the crown, India. The competition was fierce and often dangerous. French and British interests clashed in West Africa. Belgian King Leopold II's claims in the Congo Basin threatened Portuguese ambitions, and Germany, arriving late to the imperial feast, was determined to claim its share. The risk of these rivalries escalating into outright war in Europe was very real. Bismarck, a master of realpolitik, understood this danger and seized the opportunity to bring the powers to the negotiating table to resolve their disputes peacefully, on European terms. Adding a veneer of moral legitimacy to these ambitions was the potent ideology of the civilizing mission. European nations framed their expansion, not as conquest but as a benevolent duty, to bring the supposed benefits of Western civilization, Christianity, law, medicine, education, and commerce, to what they condescendingly termed backward peoples. The conference publicly condemned the slave trade, which was still active in parts of Africa, and expressed concern for missionary activities. This humanitarian rhetoric, however, thinly veiled the brutal economic and political realities of imperial ambition. The conference, participants, and the General Act. From the 15th of November 1884 to the 26th of February 1885, diplomats from 14 nations, Austria-Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Great Britain, Italy, the Netherlands, the Ottoman Empire, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Norway, and even the United States haggled over the fate of Africa in the grand rooms of Bismarck's official residence. The United States ultimately did not sign the final agreement due to a shift in its domestic politics. Notably absent from the table were any representatives of the more than 1,000 distinct African societies whose futures were being decided. A request by the Sultan of Zanzibar, one of the most powerful African rulers of the time, to attend was simply dismissed. The absence of a single African voice was not an oversight, it was the point. The conference concluded with the signing of the General Act of Berlin, a document of 38 clauses that established the rules of the imperial game. The act contained several key provisions. Freedom of commerce. The Congo River Basin was declared a free trade zone, open to merchants from all signatory nations. Free navigation was also guaranteed on the Congo and Niger rivers. Humanitarian provisions. The act condemned the slave trade and obligated signatories to work for its suppression within their spheres of influence. The Congo Free State. In a remarkable piece of diplomatic sleight of hand, the conference recognized the International Association of the Congo as the legitimate authority over the vast Congo Basin. This association was, in reality, the private property of King Leopold II of Belgium. Leopold, through his agents like Henry Morton Stanley, had secured treaties with local chiefs and masterfully lobbied the European powers, presenting himself as a humanitarian and a free trade advocate. The conference granted him this territory, 77 times larger than Belgium itself, as his personal fiefdom, the Congo Free State. The principle of effective occupation, Articles 34 and 35. This was the conference's most consequential and far-reaching decision. The principle stated that for a European power to claim a territory, it had to demonstrate effective occupation, meaning it had to establish a functioning administration, enforce its laws, and ensure freedom of trade. The mere planting of a flag or signing of a treaty with a local chief would no longer suffice. The principle of effective occupation is often misunderstood. It did not, by itself, draw the final borders of colonial Africa. In fact, the only borders formally established at the conference were those of the Congo region, and even those were later revised. Instead, the principle acted as a powerful accelerator. It effectively launched a frantic race, because now, to secure a claim, a nation had to be physically present and administering the territory. The map could no longer be claimed from the boardrooms of Europe, it had to be conquered on the ground. The agreement meant that merely symbolic acts such as the raising of a flag would no longer suffice for claiming a territory. As a result, efforts to establish colonies and colonial oppression extended from the African coastline deep into the heartland of the continent. The Berlin Conference did not partition Africa, it provided the legal framework and the competitive incentive for the European powers to do so themselves. The Scramble unleashed a physical partition of Africa in the 3 decades following the Berlin Conference. European powers plunged into the continent with a new ferocity. The race was on to establish effective occupation before a rival could do so. France pushed inland from its West African bases, conquering vast territories that would become French West Africa and French Equatorial Africa. It also established control over Madagascar. Britain, with its existing colonies in southern Africa, Cape Colony, and West Africa, Gold Coast, Nigeria, pursued a Cape to Cairo vision, seeking to link its possessions from the south to Egypt in the north. This ambition led to the conquest of Rhodesia, named after Cecil Rhodes, and brutal wars against the Boer republics in South Africa. Germany, a latecomer, claimed territories in East Africa, Tanganyika, Southwest Africa, Namibia, Togoland, and Cameroon. Portugal consolidated its ancient but weak claims into the modern states of Angola and Mozambique. Italy, determined to be a great power, took possession of Eritrea and Somalia and, after a humiliating defeat at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, the only time an African army decisively defeated a European colonial power, managed to conquer Libya. The speed and scale of this takeover were breathtaking. In 1870, a mere 10% of Africa was under formal European control. By 1914, that figure had surged to almost 90%. Only two nations remained independent: Liberia, a state founded by freed American slaves, and Ethiopia, which successfully repelled an Italian invasion. The map was drawn with little regard for the realities on the ground. Ancient kingdoms were dismantled, and long-standing rivalries between ethnic groups were frozen or exacerbated within artificial state boundaries. As the British explorer Vernie Lovett Cameron presciently observed, the Europeans were drawing lines on maps where no white man's foot had ever trod. The legacy, a continent forged and fractured. The consequences of the Berlin Conference and the subsequent partition were immediate and catastrophic for Africa. Colonial rule, once established, was extractive and brutal. Traditional governance systems were dismantled, local economies were forcibly reoriented to serve European industrial needs, and millions of Africans were subjected to forced labor. The Congo Free State became the most notorious example, where Leopold II's regime, using private armies, terrorized the population to extract rubber, leading to the deaths of an estimated 10 million Congolese through murder, starvation, and disease. The most enduring legacy of the Berlin Conference, however, is the political map of Africa itself. The artificial borders, drawn in the chancelleries of Europe, were inherited by the independent African states in the mid-20th century. To avoid the chaos that would inevitably result from attempting to redraw them, the newly independent nations, through the Organization of African Unity in 1964, agreed to accept the colonial borders as they were. This decision has had profound and lasting consequences. The borders often split cohesive ethnic groups across multiple states, creating irredentist tensions, or forced historically hostile groups to coexist within a single state, fueling internal conflict. As Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first president, lamented, the artificial boundaries of the colonial territories cannot be the basis for the independence and freedom of African peoples. The enduring impact is tragically visible in the numerous post-independence conflicts that have plagued the continent. The Democratic Republic of Congo, with its borders encompassing over 200 different ethnic groups, became the epicenter of the Second Congo War, 1998–2003, a conflict that involved 9 African nations and resulted in an estimated 5.4 million deaths, the deadliest conflict since World War II. The same arbitrary lines continue to underlie the violent clashes in the Sahel, the long-running civil wars in Sudan and South Sudan, and the ethnic and communal violence that sporadically erupts across the continent. Conclusion: the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885 was the formalization of a profound act of dispossession. Driven by industrial capitalism's hunger for resources, European great power rivalries, and a paternalistic ideology of racial superiority, the conference's 14 European participants had for 104 days and carved up a continent they did not own, without consulting a single one of its people. The resulting General Act did not draw the final borders, but it established the legal principle of effective occupation that unleashed the final, violent scramble for Africa. By 1914, the continent's political geography had been irrevocably transformed. The conference's deepest and most tragic legacy is not found in the history books but on the maps of modern Africa. The arbitrary lines drawn with rulers and pencils on maps of a largely unknown continent continue to shape the political, economic, and social realities of Africa today. The Berlin Conference did not end in 1885. Its consequences are a living, and often painful, condition of the modern world. Thank you for watching. If you found this history valuable, please like and subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective and keep the conversation going.